Hey, Next Level Agent listeners, how you doing? Mark McMinn, how are you doing today, buddy? Thank you for joining
Hey
us.
guys, how we doing?
Man, so good, man. I appreciate you taking some time out of your busy schedule today. I know you got a lot going on to just kind of share with us. But when I heard your story and the amount of success that you've had in really your not even 2 years yet in real estate, I just was like, you know what? I got to get this out. We've got to share this with more people. More people need to hear about it. And so, thanks a lot for taking the time, man, and coming on the show and sharing with the Next Level Agent listeners.
Man, super honored. Honestly, I am humbled every time I get to be in one of these conversations, because I know there are so many people who desire to be in this seat, and so to have the opportunity to share and add value, dude, like I'm honored. So thank you.
Love it. Thanks a ton, man. So, Mark, let's do this. I know who Mark is, but give us the listeners the elevator speech on who is Mark. How long have you been in the business? I know I just said under 2 years. And tell me how long you've been in the business and when you first got started.
Awesome. So really just 17 months, not long at all. Transition out of the church space. I am here in Metro Atlanta. Before this, I'd spent 10 years in nonprofit and working for churches, and decided, and we'll talk through this, I'm sure, extensively, but decided I'm good at this. I'm good in the church space, but man, there may be a better version of me somewhere else. And so dug down that rabbit trail that led me here. And so, haven't been it too long, man, loving every second of it. Fits me to hand in glove. So
That's awesome. So 17 months in. I want to go back on a few things, but tell me about your business so far. Like, what are your results? So we're winding down, right? 2018 is pretty much, it's in the books. So tell me
yeah.
about 2018. I know at the time of this recording, it's not December 31st yet. So let's just project a little bit as far as like, what do you expect closing volume and unit wise this year? And what are you thinking about for 2019?
I have four more they're supposed to close before the end of the month. I will close 62 this year, and I'm shooting for 150 next year if we make the right hires and get the right people on the boat. So
62 transactions in essentially your first full year in real estate.
Correct.
That's awesome, man. That is fantastic. So, how do you do that? How does a guy who didn't have a license 2 years ago come in and in his first full year sell 62 houses? Like, where is that business coming from?
A guy who I was really close to over the past 4 years, still am for that matter. He came to me 5 years ago pitching this book idea. And he said, Mark, often in life, it's so easy to overlook the one moment, like the one singular change. I mean, it's easy to see this in a diet sense. Like I sit down with a snack size Snickers and man, it's nothing, but that over the course of 10 years is a lot. And in the space that I was in, he was saying, Mark, always value the week by week, moment by moment change and influence that you are pouring into something. Like again, in church life for 52 weeks, every single weekend, we were trying to pull off something of exceptional quality. I mean, networks don't do that. Movies don't do that. Nobody is doing that outside of a church space, week in and week out, producing excellence. And the way you get to that is by each week adding two small tweaks, changing things moment by moment. And that's a big part of my story. A lot of people will come to me and ask that same question. And the hope is like, dude, silver bullet, give it to me. And there are some larger rocks. There is, man, get really good at Facebook advertising, not just a boost button, like really drill down and invest yourself in figuring social and those pieces. But holistically, the big hard pill that people have to swallow is, man, it's 1,000 things. It is a moment by moment thing. It's deciding at the core of you and of me. My deepest desire is that success, which is really what we're discussing, it's an ethical decision that I made, that I looked at my two kids. I have two kids, 1 6, 1 2. I have a wife who I love with all my heart, man. And I knew I owed it to them, and nothing short of it, that I owed it to them to be exceptional, to be the 10 out of 10 version of me every single day. And so, how did I do it? 1,000 different things. But each of those was taking holistically, looking inwardly, and we'll talk about this, but looking inwardly, having a deep understanding and deep level of self-awareness of who am I, what am I great at, and how can I resource that into real estate. And so what has worked for me may work for you. It may be a great tool in your tool belt, but it also may not be, because it may not fit your gifting, your strengths, your skill set. And
I'm glad you said that, because, and I want to stop you here. I want you to pick back up right there. But something I want to drive home is something we're constantly trying to teach folks, is that just because somebody else succeeds a certain way doesn't mean you have to succeed that way too. Like, it's what is it inside of you that you can see yourself getting up and doing every day, consistently, right? Consistently doing every single moment, like over a year and over 10 years, as that mentor said to you, that really pays off, because you've got to be consistent with it. And like you just said, yeah, it worked for me, but it may not work for everybody listening to this, but it could, right?
Sure. Something I learned, I got the chance to play college soccer and do some athletic stuff in college. And I was never, flat out never. You go back to Little League, I was never the best guy on my team. But I decided as a little kid, I watched and I looked, and I decided I cannot work everybody here. Like, this is just a choice I get to make every single day. And I did. I outworked everybody. As a guy who was a marginal athlete, I got the chance to play multiple sports in college and really, really enjoy that. And what's beautiful about that picture, though, is certain things that I did led me to that position, but certain things that other people led them to the exact same endpoint. And we didn't take the same road, but we were deeply aware of who we were. And for me, patience and self-awareness, you get those two in a room together and you intensify that with a lot of passion. Those are the ingredients for somebody who's deeply successful, in my opinion. And those are just things that I embraced. I realized this may take a lot of time. It may take no time, but I'm in it because I've done my homework. I've done a lot of research. I've made an educated, wise decision, and I have a holistic understanding of who I am and what I'm good at. And so that's the broad answer to your question.
I love that. Most people that I ask that question to, and I didn't know you were going to answer that way, although I'm not even a little surprised. Most people, they say, well, Facebook ads. I just did this, and you gotta. Fred and I just recorded a podcast in an episode where we talked about be your own guru, meaning, you could be a Facebook guru, but you could be a cold call, canceled, expired guru. You could be a door knocking guru, whatever. The point is like, we've got to do that. You just said those words, patience. And for me, when I hear patience, because I'm a very impatient person, but I'm patient in the long run and in the big story of it, but I'm impatient in the moment. But for the long run in the business decision, I see that. And then self-aware. So self-awareness around, hey, what are you good at? Or what am I good at? Where do I excel? And then how can I use that? How can I get in that lane and stay in that lane to build the real estate business? Because there are so many ways to do it. And
there are. We can look at guys, Ricky Carruth. Like, I could watch Ricky cold call all day long, bro. He's so good at it. Yeah. And then I'll watch somebody else. I'll watch Grant Wise go through his process on Facebook ads, and I'm just enamored. There are 1,000 ways to do this, but that doesn't mean there's 1,000 ways for me. That, in fact, it's the total opposite. I can't tell you, man, how many guys I talk to that are entirely paralyzed because they go from thing to thing to thing and give it no time, and they say it didn't work, and I'm frustrated. They brought no patience and no self-awareness to the conversation, which is leading them into a position where they're ready to quit. And if we would have began at that position of who are you, what are you great at? Like, when people choose to follow you, what is it about you that made them say yes? And then mix in some patience to that. And I'm telling you, you're going to have someone who is going to be successful. They will be successful if they are in the right lane. So,
no doubt about it. Well, first of all, that's really good stuff. let's do this. So that's how you've got it going. So we're going to end it at just over 60 transactions this year. That's fantastic. First full year, 17 be 18 months in by the time we wrap up. So 2019, you said shooting for 150. What does that look like? So are you doing this all by yourself? Do you have an assistant? Do you have buyer's agents? Tell me about that.
Yeah, man, you're looking at them. In 2019, it will be that way. The strong goal, I mean, I've got some solid people around me who are speaking into that, and I continue to value the right voices. But man, the goal unequivocally is to shift out of that because, again, going back to self-awareness, I know that I bring two blessings and deficiencies to the table. The first is that I have a level of cult of personality, and people just want to be close to Mark. They want to work with Mark. And man, we all know there's difficulty in scaling that, if it's even really possible at all. And so I know that there are some hills that need to be taken in that area. And as well, I'm a big vision guy. I am, and we'll talk about this, but my Strengths Finder profile is very strategic and futuristic. You know, those are big, big things for me. And I'm not the detail guy. And so I sat down with a guy yesterday, brilliant guy, here in my area, and basically said, dude, listen, I really need help with this. Give me some coaching, speak into what I'm doing. And if you were in my position, help me kind of execute this chessboard in front of me. Because I can see the end and I can see some middle pieces, but help me get at that micro level where you can give me some direction where I can go execute. So yeah, 2019, it's not more of the same. I mean, I don't have much sleep to give up. I still want to be a dad, and I still love my wife, and she's really smoking hot. So it's not like if she could go find somebody else, so man, it's not more grind. I got the grind thing. I always have. So now it's leaning into strategy and taking some wise, appropriate next steps that are going to result in the conclusions that we're looking for.
Well, I like that, man, because our paths cross because you are out looking for how do I put myself around people who've already blazed the path, right? Have gone down a trail that I want to go down, and you're wise enough already, even though you're so young in your career, you're wise enough to know, hey, you know what? Someone else has done this, and I can just go kind of get around a few of the people that I want to maybe not quite emulate, but at least can give me some mentorship and some guidance down this road as I take it. And then I can kind of learn and grow from there, because I know what my next step, maybe not what your next step is, but you know where you want to go. And so you're willing to put yourself in a position to get that next step.
Absolutely.
100%. That's awesome. Good for you. I think our natural reaction as people, and obviously, man, being in the church world, which I want to talk about that for a moment too, but being in the church world, I think people's natural reaction isn't necessarily what you said, which is let me go find a model, let me go find a mentor. It's kind of like, you know what, if I want to go from 62 to 150, then I guess I do need to sleep less and do more. I need to run faster, right? I need to run as fast as I can on this treadmill. But the truth of the matter is big businesses aren't built that way. Big businesses are built on people. And you realize that it's going to take a whole lot more than just Mark to get to those goals.
Yeah, man. Another thing I would say all the time to my staff and in church space, and I say when I get to coach some guys, is, man, in life, you have to choose what you lose. Life will choose for you if you are not intentional about choosing. And so in this case, sure, I could choose to lose sleep. I could choose to lose my family and my marriage. But I'm not like that. That's never in the cards. I will go live out of my car before I lose my family. And so if I'm going to get to this place where I know I long to get to and I am built for, then things have to shift. There have to be some other pieces at play, because it's not just stop sleeping. It's not just lose family. It's not embrace all these unhealthy habits. It's embrace a system and a discipline where it shifts your energy in a way where it produces results. And it may even result in a short-term slowdown. And that's okay though, because I'm playing a different game. The game has shifted in front of me. It's the Mark Miller chess, not checkers idea, which if you haven't read, outstanding book. Right. But that's what we're talking about ultimately is how do I shift the board from me constantly playing checkers here, boom, 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 to, I'm thinking 6 moves ahead, and I'm doing something that, if you don't see it and you're playing a different game in front of me, you're going to be wondering, why did he move that piece there? But I'm 6 moves ahead. So
Yeah, that's great. And I think so many of us in the sales world, we get into this business and it's a high paying sales job. And so
mhm.
we never take it from a high paying sales job to a business, uh,
Mm.
to the business that it could be. And it's clear to me that you came into this very clear. So let's talk about that. So you were raised up business wise, actually in the church world, right? I
Very
say
much.
business wise. Most people don't look at that as business, but I do,
Oh, of
because it
course.
has to function, right? It's not free to run a church. And so, man, how did that prepare you for real estate? And tell, like, how did you get in there? I know the story, but I would love for you to share how
Oh
you
man, that's
found
a great
yourself in the
question.
church world.
It's a question I get all the time because you get one of two results from the church crowd. You're like, man, you left God at the altar, like you brought him on the stake, kind of thing, you know. And then for other people, it's eyes wide open, like, what in the world? I never hear about somebody doing that. And so, to take us back a little bit, my last name is McMinn. My great granddad was a pastor. My granddad was a pastor. My dad and his brothers, you guessed it, pastors. My two brothers, guess what? Pastors. To be McMinn was, I mean, it was just synonymous. Like it's who you are. And I've always kind of been a maverick. You know, I've been a guy who loves blazing the trail and frankly loves doing it for the sake of people who are kind of misfits, kind of forgotten, kind of pushed to the side. And in church, even as a kid, like, was always a leader. I mean, it's in my DNA, it's in my blood, is to go lead. And what I was never able to distinguish, and this is no one's fault. I was never able to distinguish. It's okay for you to be a leader who loves the church and not lead the church as a paid staff member. As an 18-year-old, I was not able to navigate that truth because I love the church and I'm a McMinn, you know? And so jumped into that, and I was the guy, if you were to see my resume, it tells one story and one story alone. This guy is going to come in and grow this thing a lot, and he's going to be gone in 2 years because he's bored. And that's what would happen. Go in, grow it a lot, have some personality conflict of, man, there are too many of this, or we're seeing this, and why are those people here, and whatever. And it would lead to a transition. And I remember, man, being just so frustrated because I'm looking around saying, why aren't we all on the same page? Like, if we agree on these like very basic things of why we're here, why are we having this issue? And I was never able to drill that down until this was about 4 years ago. I connected with a coach. Her name is Tracy Newkirk. Tracy is a dear friend in my life and continues to have a significant level of influence in my direction and my leadership. But she introduced me to a curriculum that's now called Clifton Strengths. At the time, it was called StrengthsFinder. And took me through it. And my top 5, if you haven't seen it, a question I posed earlier, I mean, when people choose to follow you, commit to you, what is it about you that led them to say yes? And that's what strengths ultimately helps you boil down. And my top 5, my number 1 was futuristic. Where are things going tomorrow? Number 2 was ideation. Man, I can watch Shark Tank all day long. I'm a serial entrepreneur, all of that. Number 3, competition, which was my only people theme in my top 5. Like, when you think of your pastor, no one thinks of competition. They think the total opposite of that. And that was my only people thing. My number 4 was achiever. Man, I love checking things off my box. Let's get it done. Let's get this project going. Ready, shoot, aim. And number 5 is strategic, which, luckily helps deal with some of that. Let's jump in and do stuff. But that's it. I mean, that's me. I am a trailblazer. Let's go take some ground. I'm not a settler. I'm not the guy who, like, the city's been there and let's just kind of hang in status quo. And she looked at me and said, Mark, like, clearly no one's ever told you this. You at your best is just not a pastor. Like, you're good. You are 30 years old and you're a senior leader at one of the largest churches in the nation. That's good. But I just got to tell you, like, the best version of you isn't here. It's just not, because day in and day out, like, how is a pastor supposed to be competitive? You have to have numbers to be competitive. And so the only way you get to be competitive is say, my church is bigger than yours. And that is uber unhealthy. Like the only way you can express the majority of my skill set is to do it in a way that's not ultimately beneficial for the church. And so go ahead, jump in.
What was your response, whether internal or external, when she said that to you and she said, you're like, the best version of you isn't inside the church?
I thought, I'm a senior leader at one of the largest churches. Help me understand that. Like, how can you say that to me? I'm crushing it over here. I took a campus that was literally a couple hundred people, and now there are 1,200 people who call that home in a year. Like, help me I remember being so irritated, not at her, but like at that statement, and even honestly that truth, because I had known all of that about me. Strengths gave me a language for it. And my brother, he went and got certified, man. He's kind of my day in, day out coach. He knows me well. I have given him massive permission to speak into my life in those areas. And he continually, keeps me close to it. But I just wasn't willing to hear it at the time, because stuff's really good right now. And I'm really good. And my wife loves this, and my kids love this. And this is safe. This is a box I know. So don't mess with my box. Please don't mess with my box. But it was the best thing she could have ever done, because nobody else had a language that I could hear and was outside of it in a way that I respected. It was a voice that I valued and respected, who said something hard that she knew I couldn't swallow in the moment, but she knew as it simmered, it would mature and grow roots, which it did.